Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds, England, and we help people living with terminal illnesses and are dealing with bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. In each episode, I have a different guest on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We chat about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them for a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Martyn Joseph, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, today I'm here with Martyn Joseph. Thanks for joining me, Martyn.
Pleasure, Ben. Nice to be with you, Ben.
Yeah, we're looking forward to talking to you. So this is the Swan Song Project Podcast. If you're new to the podcast, each episode I have a different songwriter on. I ask them to share me one of their songs, and we talk about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them to share a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. So, Martyn, which one of your songs have you chose to share with us today?
The first song is a song called Nye. In brackets, a song for the NHS. That's my first song. It's a song that came about a commission, actually, because about 4 or 5 years ago was the 800th year anniversary of the signing of the Magna Carta, and the British Parliament, in conjunction with the English Folk and Dance Society, asked for renegade folk singers, of which I was the Welsh representative, to commemorate this event by writing songs based on Acts of Parliament since the 14th century, which doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs, but actually it was an incredible thing to do. So they gave us access to all this law, the original law, up at Houses of Parliament there in one of the towers there, and it's all the original documents are there, and you can literally hold this stuff in your hands, So the idea was, as I say, was to put meat on the bones of these things, to try and make them alive and perhaps relevant, and to show that though democracy can be an old dinosaur, it does gradually get things done, as it were. I could pick up the act that stopped kids working underground. I could pick up the act that gave women the right to vote in the UK. So it was quite a thing. And one of the things I came upon was the 1946 Health Act, brought in by the Welsh, the Labour government under the Nye Bevan was the health secretary at the time, and I was aware of Nye Bevan and his great oratory, but I thought, well, maybe I could write about that, especially with the Welsh connection. So I sat down, and this is not necessarily my tip for songwriters, but one of the things I do is blitz the page with information. I don't just try and sit there looking and try to wrestle about that very first line. I'll take this is my sketchbook type of thing, and I'll on the left-hand side of the page, I'll just blitz the page with ideas, so that they don't have to. It doesn't have to rhyme. It's not succinct in any way. It's just like, anything I can think about my subject matter, So I would write down things like cancer, ward, cups of tea, nurses, doctors, ambulances, anything that just came together, and so that when you stare at the page, you're looking at information on the left hand side, which is encouraging. It's like you've got a few colours in which to make your painting. And then Nye was this incredible orator, so he literally wrote the chorus: "The purpose of power is to give it away. This is my truth, tell me yours," which is a line that the Manic Street Preachers took as well when they wrote it about him. Freedom won't be freedom until poverty is gone. So I just added, "And Nye, your dreams alive and strong." So there was my chorus. Thank you, Nye Bevan. Didn't have to pay him. And then kind of looking for a way in to tell the story as I researched him on Wikipedia and everything he'd done. Just to as I say, get this basic information before I then put my own take on it all. And I noticed that he was actually born 9 days. He died rather 9 days before I was born. And I wrote that down 9 days before I was born, and then I suddenly thought, that's a good opening line. And 9 days before I was born, you were gone, but what you left behind. And that's how I got into the song. And as I say, I wrote it for this project to commemorate the signing of the Magna Carta, but it's gone on to be a song that means a bit more than that now, I think, in terms of what the pandemic and the courageous work of the NHS workers and volunteers, and you know, the way we were applauding them for a while, you know, at the start of this journey, and so before the pandemic I was doing it, and I was actually sort of saying, hey, anyone here working for the NHS in the crowd, and people would put their hands up, and as they did so, people would applaud. So when we do it in the future, when I do it in the future, I think that's going to be quite the moment for some people as we give gratitude and thanks for the incredible sacrifice of people. So yeah, that's a bit about how the song came about.
Brilliant. So let's hear it now. So this is Nye by Martyn Joseph.
9 days before I was born, you were gone. What you left behind. Great architect of health reform came forth from your soft heart and tough mind. When nothing good comes easy, we fight for the dreams that we hold. And you finally got your bill through, though you had to stuff their mouths with gold. And the purpose of power is to give it away. This is my truth, tell me yours. Freedom won't be freedom until poverty is gone. So now your dream's alive and strong. This tired and drained, it's 2 a.m. She summons up the strength again, she smiles. It's not for the wage she does this job, it's a greater call that cannot be defined. The surgery, the plaster tape, the arm around the aching and confused. And drugs to give a little one more time to play, they should never be refused. And the purpose of power is to give it away. This is my truth, tell me yours. Freedom won't be freedom until poverty is gone. So now your dream's alive and strong. The accident, the cancer cell, the final breath of sacrament at dawn. The beating heart, the broken to the cry of the fragile being born. Just 9 days before I was born, you were gone, oh, but what you left behind. Your greatest hour remains with us now. We're holding on with soft hearts and tough minds. Listen, no society can call itself civilized if the sick are denied through lack of means. And if you don't believe me, just take a plane, my friend. Go break your arm, see what it costs in New Orleans. And the purpose of power is to give it away. This is my truth, tell me yours. Freedom won't be freedom until poverty is gone. So now your dream's alive and strong. And the purpose of power is to give it away. This is my truth, tell me yours. Freedom won't be freedom until poverty is gone. So now your dream's alive, alive and strong. Yes, it
is. Okay, brilliant. So that was Nye. Yeah, it's a really interesting story about how it came about. Yeah, I'm trying to know where to start with it. Have you done songs like that before, where you've had a bit of history and then like researched around it and then fleshed it out? And one thing what I really liked what you said about the 9 days before you were born line, of like, then it's putting it in your voice, and they're making it very personal, isn't it? It's not just a story. It's like, it's how this really fits into your life as well, in a way.
Yeah. I was telling it from both a personal perspective and a general perspective, I suppose. I think that's an interesting thing to weave into your songwriting, and I have done that before. I've tackled other historic subjects. One of a song that I wrote back in the 90s that's a sort of a mainstay of my music, really, is a song called Dick Penderyn, and it was a story of a guy called Richard Lewis who was unjustly hung for his part in the Merthyr riots in 1831. But my first I first came across that story as such through a novel called The Fire People by a guy called Alexander Cordell, who was an English writer who wrote historical novels about Welsh history. And that book gave me a lot of the background of the Industrial Revolution, stuff going on here in South Wales, that I didn't really know much about, I'm ashamed to say. Maybe I wasn't listening in school, I don't know, but I just didn't really know the history of my own land. And I think as you walk on a bit and you get a little older, I think the past is a bit more interesting to you because you're aware of it more than when you're younger. And, it's just all about the future. So I have rehearsed. In fact, I did another project with children in Tonopandi back in 2010 to commemorate when Churchill sent the troops in to quell the miners in 1910. It was a 100-year anniversary, and I went into a school and we wrote songs based on that history. So it's not something I've done a huge amount of, but it's something I seem to be decently okay at it in this terms of fleshing out the story and of course there's always lessons from the past in a song that we can apply to now. There's always something that resonates, so if you're creative enough, you can sort of somehow drag the past into the future and either show how nothing's changed, or perhaps let's make sure it doesn't happen again, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's a great I think it's a great way of it's a great method of songwriting to do that, and to take something like that and then put it in a way which might make it more accessible to people who might not know about it. There's lots of things like that where I've really liked a song and I might not even get it at first of what it's about, but then you can look a bit more into it and like, oh, so that's what this is about, and you learn all about something, which is a great thing to do. And it's also like, I liked what you said about the chorus is all his words. That a lot of the time, then it saves you a bit of a job, doesn't it? Sometimes
it's absolutely Ben. I mean, he's if you just go to Wikipedia and you look at some of the quotes that it's just astonishing. It makes this lot look like that we have these days just look like illiterate children. And I think we miss some of that. I don't mean to be snobbish about language as such, but you think of JFK and the speeches and Bobby Kennedy, and great orators of the past, people that have spoken into a moment, and Churchill, I guess, even though I'm not a fan of everything he did, but as such, they make us stop and wonder and think, like art does, and you know all about this with Swan Song, that a song can make you feel like you're not alone in the world, as can a stained glass window, a beautiful piece of poetry, a painting, ice cream all over a kid's face. These things that step into the void and create hope, I think, and transcend the moment. And I think that's a vital part of our humanity, And so when people come along like Nye Bevan, who just have this ability to take the language and create in it inspiration as they speak for others, then I just think that should be celebrated, and we need more of it. An oratory that that takes any hate speech and makes it look so small.
Yeah, it's a great skill, isn't it? Being a good speaker. How was the so what was the commission itself was kind of looser in its what was the commission itself, and then how did you then?
Well, the commission came from Parliament were as not any bipartisan thing. It wasn't conservative or whatever. It was just the Office of Parliament wanted to celebrate the fact that this document was signed, 800 years ago. That is actually the founding document of democracy itself. It was the first establishment of a vote, I believe, and et cetera, et cetera. And they thought they'd like to do that through music, and I suppose they looked at the genre of folk as a way of storytelling, that folk music traditionally has dealt with historic moments in time and has tried to, write songs about it, and therefore they reached out. There may have been other mediums involved as well. I'm sure there were. In fact, I remember there were some beautiful posters that people had done that were hanging up when we went to Parliament to see the original document. So I guess they were just trying to step outside of the box and reach out to people that might think of it as a very dull thing to think, who cares if the Magna Carta was signed 800 years ago, I can't feed my kids or whatever. But this was perhaps showing how in the past actually good has come out of it. We can all be very cynical about politics and the movement of law and all the rest of it, and say nothing has ever changed and blah blah blah. But when you look at it, you realize actually it has taken place. We have come a long way, albeit very slowly, and we have a long way to go, but we have come a long way from the days when as I said, kids were working underground, malnourished. Women were not allowed to even vote in our country. For goodness' sake. So that's to be celebrated, despite our shortcomings. We're getting somewhere. I suppose was the message. And it felt. When you hear, well, Parliament wants you to write songs, you think, oh yeah, when you took it in that spirit, you think, this is an honor actually, and it was, and then the four of us made a record. It was called Sweet Liberties. I think it's on online, and it was, I think it was Maz O'Connor, Sam Carter, and Nancy Kerr, and myself. So and we then went out and toured. We did about 2 weeks of just dates around the country where we played these songs to people, and so that was the project in a nutshell. But that's, for me, the song that I wrote, Nye, has now become a very popular song. So it was great that I was able to get that out of it, because you don't automatically assume it was going to be that way. But it's just that I just got fortunate to write this song that captured people's imagination.
Yeah, that sounds like a great project. So what I was kind of thinking about with it is, so it sounds like you had quite a broad scope of what you could write about within that project, and you were attracted to the Nye Bevans story for some of the reasons you outlined earlier. I was thinking about, how is that, what's your normal inspiration process like, I guess? So obviously there you had some restrictions, but still quite a bit of scope within what you were writing, and how was that different, I guess, to where your ideas normally come from?
Yeah, it's quite different. I'm not someone who normally writes to request, write a song about this or whatever. For me, it's more of it's more of a spiritual thing, I suppose. For me, it's the inspiration is just through walking through the world every day and allowing yourself the generosity to feel those things. And the guitar for me has always been my cheap therapist. It's the way, ever since I was a kid, really, that I was able to give myself some sense of presence, should we say. I was a pretty shy kid and not sort of the center of attention in any way, and I'm not saying I wanted to be the center of attention, but we all want to be recognized and say, hey, here I am, and the guitar, because I learnt that, and so I wrote my first song when I was about 10 years old, quite excitedly, and saying, "Hey, look at this! I've written a song," and it was exciting, and that obviously has progressed through the years. But I can look at the songs that I've written, and it's hundreds now. I don't know how many songs I've written, but they are certainly a catalogue. They're like photographs. They show me as a boy, as a teenager, going through life. I'm 60 now, and on all the way along, I have songs that have accompanied my journey because I was able to, in my own words, they make sense to me. If they don't make sense to everybody else, I was able to articulate what was in my heart, and it felt good to do so because it just felt like, well, and of course the full circle is when you write that song, it goes out there, and then someone lets you know that has been of use to them, and that moment is utopia, because that's everything you really want. You create a piece of work. If you're an artist, or I don't know, if you're a mechanic, you fix someone's car and they go away and say, "Hey, my car's driving." That's a great feeling, and for me, it's the same when I write a song. I'm not a very confident person in my own abilities as such, but when it happens and you set that thing out there, and then someone writes you an email or something, or says at a gig and says, that song really made such a difference, blah blah blah, then that's when I know I've done my job. I suppose, and I suppose it's a bit easier for the mechanic to know he's done his job, because the car runs and there you go. Whereas, you write a song and you put it out there, and there's that sense of a little vulnerability. Am I any good, or is this actually crap?
Yeah. It's so interesting that it's different. So like, I kind of connect exactly with what you were saying about, like, I was very shy growing up, and the guitar was one of those things for me that gave me a license to be louder.
Yeah.
I think, in a normal conversation, I couldn't. But when I had a guitar, it's like, wow, I've got a license now, because I'm performing in a way to, this is my chance to express. But like, I know it's very common with musicians, isn't it, of that, and it's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people think, that they think the musician will be the really confident person. But so, I mean, those kind of reasons for doing things, combined with the, like what you're talking about with when someone is really receptive to one of your songs, and how satisfying a feeling that is. And like, I always think songwriting is it's a generous act in a way and like, it's kind of almost a paradox that you do it for, and you mentioned it being a form of therapy as well. Like, you can do it for your own personal reasons, and it makes you feel good. But also, when you give a song to the world, like, you don't know who's going to really benefit from that. And it's not something you have to do either, like, to explore yourself in those ways and express it. I always think it's really generous for people do share songs, especially like ones from the heart and things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose you're right. I never think, oh gosh, I'm being generous. I'm just doing what I do, but I'm feeling enormously blessed to know, that I've been able to, make a living, not a killing, but a living through something that is of such a vital part of my DNA. And I would do this anyway. If I was a milkman, I would come home and write songs. But often, I sit wherever I sit. But here, this is my studio, and I'll just pick up one of these things and doodle, and suddenly, you're off down a little journey that you had no idea you were going to happen when you come into the room, and music has this way of opening up parts of us, and suddenly I'm saying something, and I think, oh gosh, yeah, but it was not something that was present in my mind at all, so it's a wonderful. I've discovered more about myself probably through playing the instrument than I would if I'd done hours of therapy in many ways, because it just comes out. And it's fantastic.
So is that how you'd normally do it? You'd normally pick up an instrument and just kind of noodle away and see what comes out, or do you?
Well, I've done quite a bit of that on this new record because I haven't been traveling, obviously, like everybody else. So there's been a little bit of that, but for me, usually, people say, does the music or the lyric come first? And for me, it's always the idea, the fact that I wanted to say something. I think the best songs are the ones where you really feel you have something to say. So I can pick up a guitar and within 10 minutes, I can have a little vibe going, and I can just put some words to that. And, some people, even the words aren't coherent, they don't know what they mean necessarily, but they're sentences, and people will say, I've written a song. But for me, I always feel that if you're passionate about something, whatever it is, whether it's vanilla ice cream or the situation in the Middle East, whatever it might be, if you're passionate with an opinion and you want to say that, then that's the most powerful place you can go. Your best song, I always say to people, is, what are you feeling right now? What's the most important thing in your life? That's where your next best song is, without a doubt. And then if you can capture that with a sense of, truth and commitment, then you create something beautiful. Dylan Thomas said that the world is never the same once a good poem has been written. The world changes, and I think it's the same. That the universe shifts slightly. I'm really and this. I've got all my notebooks behind me here, and there are many of them, but these are all pages full of just ideas, of just sentences and manifestos, little ideas that I get, driving along in the car or whatever it might be, that I write down, and so that I've got some reference to where I was at the time, and what I was thinking, and that's for me. And then I tend to wrap melody around the lyrics. So I want 2 or 3 lines before I really want to move to the musical instrument. But there are exceptions.
Yeah. And do you write to a schedule, or sort of like, are you one of the people who kind of says, I'm going to go and write for X amount of hours today, or do you more kind of follow inspiration and see what happens?
I more follow the spirit, because usually I'm usually an awful lot on the, I've been up to the pandemic, I'm about 150 shows a year guy, so I'm often traveling, and often that's when those lyrical ideas come, because you travel again, it broadens your mind. You see things that you hadn't seen before, and a lot of my music is the idea, certainly not necessarily the song itself, but the ideas will have come from traveling. I mean, a lot of my work, my songs are social songs, but social based, telling stories of certain situations, and that has come because the guitar gave me the privilege of travel. The guitar, I back in 1980, about 1987, 98, the guitar gave me the ability to travel to a really desperate situation. I went to Thailand actually with a relief organization, and they showed me poverty, true poverty, for the first time. It's one thing to see it on your screen, but to go and sit with powerless people in an awful situation, it shook me up to the core. And I knew he existed, but when you sit there, and I just thought, I just can't. I need to write about this. I need to embrace the questions and the mystery of life more than any stomping manifestos I might personally have right now, at the age of 26 or 27, whatever it was. So certainly, I think travel has been a very big part of me. So I don't really have I might come in here with good intentions too, and I'll just play piano for an hour because I want to try and improve my piano. I might think I'll go and write a song, and then I think, I'll just play some piano, and I just practice piano for now. So I'm not a very disciplined person. I never have been, and I just feel you have to follow the spirit wherever it's taking you in any given moment. But sometimes, sometimes I'll spend all day just writing a song, but I don't plan it. It's very open.
Yeah. One question that how do you feel about songs that obviously you've been doing it a long time? How long have you been writing songs?
50 years now.
50 years, yeah.
Since I was 10, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say 40 years in terms of anything that was
seriously.
Yeah.
I'm always just interested in, like, and I like the way you described it, of like having them as, you know, it's almost like a photo album, I guess, of you throughout your life. But like, do you play them from all stages, or like, how do you feel about different parts of your songwriting development? I guess it's something like, obviously I've been writing songs nearly as long as you have, but I can see like some of my really early songs I really like and still play, and some of them I'm a bit cringy about. And but it's interesting seeing like, oh, I wouldn't write anything like that now. I wouldn't write a line like that. I wouldn't do. But obviously you've done it a lot longer than me, so I'm also interested in your view on songs through your life.
Natural, and I probably wouldn't know many artists who wouldn't feel exactly like you feel, and I certainly feel the same way. Unfortunately for me, some of mine are actually on albums, you know.
Yeah.
And people will bring me my first record, which I recorded in Leeds, where you're based, back in 1983, 82, called "I'm Only Beginning," you know. And I looked like a young Prince Andrew on the front of it. It's the most cheesiest cover, you know. And yeah, the songs were about. In those days, I was singing about sort of faith-based spiritual songs quite a lot. You know, and I was involved in a church situation at the time, and I would still class myself as a believer today, but I'm not really a church goer, and I would sort of a lot of that fundamental stuff for me has just, you know, alienated me from that world a lot. But so some of those songs are really they don't speak for me now, and that's difficult because, you know, I have some people who say, well, play this song, and I just can't do it because I don't believe it anymore. But I think that's I think that's natural, you know. I think that you know, I'm sure there's, you know, a lot of, you know, we grow, we develop, we become different, and thank God for that, you know, and we become different souls, and therefore I don't really see the relevance unless I can believe it. You know, I've got to believe what I'm singing, you know, and be committed to it. So I guess that I can identify with what you say very much. But not only that, I can also, it's not so much for me the songs, but it's how I sound on the records.
Yeah.
You know, I signed to CBS Records in the early 90s. It became Sony, and I had a few songs in the charts. And one of the things I've done recently is I've had some old backing tracks, and I've re-recorded my vocals on them, and I much prefer my voice now to what it was in those days, you know. So there's that little bit of sense of, you know, I sound like a squeaky mouse on some of those things, you know. So there's a little bit of that, but yeah, I think it's true, and I think it's natural, but you know, unfortunately, you know, people have access to your earlier. It'd be like someone reading your essay you wrote when you were 18 in school, wasn't it? You know.
Yeah.
But they can buy it on eBay, you know. It happens, but we grow, and I'm a huge, I'm very envious and admiring of artists. You know, you look like Springsteen, and you just see the quality of the work right from the very beginning, or Dylan, or whatever it might be. You know, you just think, oh, genius. You know, that's especially gifted. And for me, it's been quite a journey, and I'm quite a different person now to when I was that. I was a decent person at the age 18, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever it was, but I'm a very, very different person in my outlook on the world now. And so I think I've written enough songs to rearrange the balance, but they're still there. And
yeah.
They're not easy photos to look at. To use our analogy.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right that it's like I think the opposite would be worse in a way. Like if I didn't feel like I was different than I was 10 years ago, then I'd be like, if you've not had any growth or any development in a way, that would be worse than feeling a bit kind of cringy about where things are. And I think the same, like certain songs from different periods. And for me, and the same with recording as well. I really hate listening to old recordings of myself. But trying to think of it as like, well, that's a moment in time and that's what that is. And that was with my skill set at that time, and seeing it as a progression. And yeah, like certain songs that have lasted from the earlier days, like so sometimes there's certain ones where you did get it, you got the nail on the head, even if it wasn't as consistent in the earlier days.
And also, you know, I mean, I'm talking about the 1980s, you know, and so I was also not slave, but so influenced by the music of the day, you know, and so I'm trying to be probably Spandau Ballet and what, you know, so, you know, I'm trying to sound like, you know, and so it dates you, and I think it took me a while, Ben, to find my voice of who I really am. And I again, isn't that an actor? But the difference is you kind of do it publicly if you're an artist, and you know, and you kind of wish you could just take back some of that, you know, but you can't, and it's fine. But yeah, enough said.
Yeah, I think that's something what people new to songwriting don't necessarily understand all the time, of how much of that, you know, that it's not you can write songs or you can't. It's you write songs and you write songs and you write songs, and part of it's learning the craft of how you write songs, and part of it's learning who you are and what your voice is and how you want to express yourself. And like say you'll try different things. You might try a Spandau Ballet thing, you might try something else, and you know, and then until you find. So it's that kind of long-term commitment. Also, people have that idea of music, don't they? That it's like you can have very quick success, or you just need to write one great song, but it's very rare that's the case, isn't it? Like most people, it's writing
absolutely. And in fact, you know, I had a top 40 hit with a song called "Dolphins Make Me Cry," and I only play it if it's requested. You know, if most people, if they've had a top 40 hit, it's on the set list every night because people come, you know. But I've picked up so many songs since those artists since those days. Audience. You know, people come that they're not really aware of that. You know, and so I just, you know, people say, why don't you play the Dolphins song? And I say, I just feel like I've got better songs. Well, I'll do it if you want. You know, you know, so.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Sorry for the interruption. Just want to drop a quick note in here to say that the Swan Song Project is a registered charity. If you're enjoying this podcast and you'd like to consider supporting us, there are several ways you can donate through the website. It all goes towards supporting more people living with terminal illnesses to write and record their original songs. If you'd also like to show your support for the podcast, we always appreciate any reviews you can leave us. You know, likes, shares, subscribes, all that kind of business. Always really helps. So if you'd like to do any of that, it's really much appreciated. Hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. Yeah, that's great, Martyn. So let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with me a songwriting tip that might be useful for some of our listeners. So what would your tip be for us, Martyn?
Well, I think my main tip is that you have to follow the muse that's in front of you at any given time. That is to say, if I'm playing music here, let's take it from a music point of view for starters. If I'm just playing a riff on the guitar and I suddenly think, oh, that's quite nice, I quite like that, yeah, that's great, I'll just go and have a cup of tea. And I'll go and have a cup of tea and I'll come back 15 minutes later and guarantee you that something has changed. Mm-hmm. You can't quite get the same nuance that you had or whatever it might be. And that's the beauty of the first take, as it were. So it's the same with lyrics. If you don't make some mental note of the thought process of where what you were thinking, and you were in the car suddenly and someone said something on the radio and you thought, oh, blah, 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 blah. Well, you need to pull over near the service station and get that thing written down. And I keep here's an example of that, really, because this is, you know, our phones, which are our new notebooks, I suppose. So if I look here, this is something called Music Memos, which is an app, and if I press my library, these are all ideas for songs. Mm-hmm. I can keep going. So that means that in those moments, wherever it was, I captured what I was thinking, or I wrote it down in the notebook. Because if you don't do it, then the song says, "Okay, see ya," and it goes off, and Billy Bragg gets it instead of you. You know, so and I want the song. You know? Yeah. I remember driving was taking my daughter Harriet back to university in London about 5-6 years ago, and we were driving up the M4, and we started swapping songs on our iPhones. She'd play me a song, so she played me Muse, and I'd play her Springsteen. She'd play me Kings of Leon, I'd play her Rolling Stones, this sort of thing. So it was a lovely, and we stopped at memory services on the M4, and I thought, there's something going on here, So I just wrote driving her back to London, and I wrote a couple of the song references, and that became a song, which has proved really, really popular. It's a common theme amongst parents. You're driving your kids back to some place where you're going to let them go, and so I wrote the song about that and abuse. But I know that if I hadn't stopped when at the service, and if I hadn't just written, it's not that I wouldn't have remembered the conversation or anything, but there's something tangible about grabbing the actual moment where you are and making some physical note so that you can go back to that, and it just reignites the thing in a way that is different when you think, oh yeah, I'll think about that tomorrow morning after breakfast. Something is gone. So recognize the muse in front of you and make a note of it as soon as you possibly can, otherwise it will go elsewhere. That's my tip.
I really like it, man. That's really good. I'm definitely very guilty of not doing that, of having the idea of like, I'll think about that tomorrow, I'll come back to that one. And I mean, I guess, like, I don't know, what you said about the song goes somewhere else. Yeah. Again, I really like that. That kind of, and I've heard, lots of songs talk like, the songs are out there to be written. It's a bit like sculptures, isn't it? Like there's a piece of stone and someone's got to uncover it to make that thing. But then that's what I guess, like, when I've thought about that before, and I've thought like, oh well, I'll remember that I want to write a song about this theme, this kind of idea that I had here. But the not doing it straight away, whether that then affects your ability to channel it, certainly in the way it would have been at first. I really like it. It's definitely something that I feel like I need to get better at doing.
Yeah, and I think it's not something that I can actually describe any more than that. But honestly, it's almost like there's something else going on, and you want to just be in that moment and receive it. I honestly think there's something in that if you don't, then it won't be this. It won't be whatever it could have been at that moment, and that's what bothers me. If I don't, it's like, and I think that in that moment, that's when you're feeling something. You won't feel quite the same way, and it'll change, and I don't think it'll be for the better. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I'll give you another one. Do you want another quick tip? Are you allowed to?
Yeah. I've just got one. Well, I've got two little points. I just want to ask you about that one before we move on there.
Okay.
First, how much do you normally write down when you do that? So, like, you mentioned then about driving in the car. Like, is it, and do you have like because obviously it depends how much time you've got, I guess, when you're doing this, but like, how many ideas do you get before you're like, that's the idea captured for now, and then I'll come back to another time?
Well, what I will always do if I can is just take the guitar and just play one chord and then just say the words or whatever it is, and just see if something comes. Because I'm being a bit sort of new agey here, but I honestly think there's something that can happen in that moment that it's there with you, So I won't plan the chord. I'll just it's like, where does this lead me musically at this moment? Just to get that initial vibe. And sometimes, if it's a musical idea, I'll play that. I'll just get the initial thing down so I don't lose it. Once I've got that, I'm kind of happy, but I might then just play it for another 10 minutes and suddenly it'll develop again, so I'll get that bit of it, and so there might be 5 sections to the musical idea, which I didn't have 20 minutes ago, but suddenly I've got, 20 minutes later, I've got 4 or 5, and it's just building blocks, just the way, if I go there, that's quite good. How about if I go to the 7? Yeah, okay, that type of thing, and then I won't necessarily, but I don't put myself under pressure to think, right, I need to finish this now.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got enough of it that I've captured it, that it's there, and it's in my domain now, and it's mine to work on. So I don't put myself under huge pressure to try and complete the thing, because I think that can spoil it too. So just okay, I've got that, and I feel that I feel like I've honoured the moment.
You scratch that itch.
Yeah, I've honoured the moment. It's there, and I can come back to that in 3 days' time, and I know that I've got something going on.
Yeah, and the next thing I was going to ask you, which might be a tougher question, and it's so, how do you? Is there anything you can say about when what it's like when when you've got one of those things that you feel you need to put down? How do you know something is one of those things that you need to put down and not another thought? How do you like? Is there anything you can say about that? So it's, I guess I'm assuming it's kind of like just a feeling that songwriters get of like spotting what might be a song. But is there anything you can say about what it feels like for you when you've got something where then you need to do that? You need to stop and think about it.
I think
Sorry, it's a bit of a weird question.
No, it's a good question. I'm just trying to think. What is it? I think it's anything that actually excites me. Excite might be the wrong. Inspires. If I suddenly say a line, I think, oh, that's a good line. That really works. Then it's that sense that it's good work, right? So. I suppose you develop instincts as a writer, as I say, I've been in it for a long time now, that when something is, that's got some edge to it, or whereas I know something that's just a bit mediocre and therefore so, but often it's also running alongside my own personal situation with whatever's going on. So if I'm feeling a little heavy and depressed about the entire world or whatever's going on, or if but even in the midst of that moment, you can hear the one story that just gives you where the light comes in, and you just see this great hope, and so you're in some sort of emotional state, and you recognize that you're capturing that in some way that is going to be useful to yourself, but you think that's going to help other people, that type of thing too. The immediate thing is a selfish thing, but it quickly opens up for me to community, to that sense that if I share this, if I can capture this thought, I think I'm capturing something that other people feel as well, and therefore, they're probably other people are great architects, they're great radio presenters, they're great garden creators, they're great bakers and postmen, but I can do this. I'm no good at those other things, but I can do this. I can't. I'm crap at cooking. Whatever. But I can do this, and it's of use in the world. And I think it's just that little bit of recognition that has come along, and it's something it's a responsibility that I have to nurture this now and see where it goes. That's the feeling. I know those are a lot of words, but that's the feeling. It's that sudden sense of ooh, I recognize this. This is that moment, that type of thing, when I know I've got something. I don't know if that makes sense. But
yeah, no, that was great, man. Thanks. Yeah, it's a tricky kind of thing to describe, I'm sure, but I think you did a good job of it there. So you said you had another quick songwriting tip for us?
Yeah, my other tip is I honestly believe everyone should have a notebook. I write most of my ideas down in here as such, rather than they get transferred to the computer eventually, so I can just move a few things around. But I would encourage you to take your notebook down to your local bookstore and Waterstones or whatever you buy your books, and just go in there for an hour and write down 25 titles that inspire you from books, from a novel, whatever it might be. And just write down those things, and then and take them home. And you're not sort of stealing stuff. You're just looking for inspiration, because then you can take that and you can move those words around. Because whoever wrote those books, they worked on that title for 3 or 4 years probably, because so it would capture your eye, as you went past it. Also, the opening paragraphs of a book and the last paragraphs usually contain some. So I would just write down 25 titles, take them home and look at them, and let that feed everything that we've talked about, what you're feeling and everything else, and just see where that leads you. I'm not saying copy the title, you can if you want. But I wrote, I have a song called All This Time, which I wrote about Canada, and there was a novel called snow falling on cedar, and my opening line is snow on cedar, silence falls. And it literally came because I was reading that book at the time. That's just one example. It's not a great example, but I find that there's great inspiration, obviously, in books and reading and poetry and all that stuff, but just book titles themselves, the things we have carried here, all the light we cannot see. I mean, that's that great novel that came out a few years ago, All the Light We Cannot See. You write that down. Where does that lead you as a sentence itself? Where does that take you in terms of your own personal journey right now? All the light we cannot see. I cannot see the light. The light is in front of me. The light is behind me, etc., etc. Just think on them, and it will take you, etc. That's the other tip.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. Yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially for people who, if someone's struggling with what to write about, you can proactively go out and look for things to feed your inspiration in those ways. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And I believe we've got an exclusive here. Is that right, Martyn?
You have. It's not yet released. It's just up on my Patreon page. That's all. And it's a song called Shadowboxing, which unusually I wrote at the piano, and I very rarely write at the piano. So my father, and I know that, particular to the Swan Song Project, this was to be associated with bereavement, and this is associated with bereavement, but not full bereavement, because my father has Alzheimer's, and he's been raging against the dying of the light for some 6 years now, and he's permanently in hospital, and he doesn't really recognize us anymore. And my mum is 86, and she's like a spring chicken. She's extraordinary, and I see her being very brave, but it's difficult. It's a horrible disease, and when people you know and love don't know who you are anymore, yet they are present, there is a bereavement. It's a sense that my father has gone, but he's still here. And about 3 years ago, Ben, I went to visit Mum and Dad, and I sat with Dad for a few hours to give Mum a bit of a few hours off. She went shopping or something, and he sort of slept most of the time. He had some TV on, but at one point he got up, and I assumed he wanted to go to the bathroom, so I got up to sort of help him. And he looked at me and smiled, and he put his fists up like this and started doing a bit of this, So I said, "Oh, okay, Dad, we're gonna, when you boom, boom," and he just sort of put his fist on my chin. He said, "I love you, son," just like that. It was just a kind of lovely moment. And in my being true to my formula that we've already talked about, I just went home and in this book I wrote down Shadowbox. Just wrote them. That was enough for me at the time. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I just thought Shadowbox, and I left it there for a year. I just didn't do much with it. And then, was it earlier this year? I think it was earlier this year. I came back to it, and backing up what I said, it was enough. It had the power to take me back to that moment, and what have you. So I wrote this song called Shadowboxing, and it's a complicated song in the sense that it weaves between the past and the present. Like there's a line about you're still in there ducking and diving like a good one. We played that game all our lives. Some days I'd be right there with you, and some days there'd be 1,000 miles. Some days I could feel like I was very different to my dad, and other days, we shared an awful lot together too. So it's about that contradiction at times of feeling so close to someone, so loved, and yet at times we were worlds apart, and that's almost like how it feels now. That I feel close to him, love him dearly, speak to him every few days, and talk absolute gibberish on the phone, and it was an unusual way of, instead of writing a song called I Love You Dad or Miss You Dad, Shadowboxing seemed like a little bit more removed from the emotional as such. So it's kind of playful a little bit in that way too. But my grandfather also, he died from Alzheimer's, and I wrote a song called Carried in Sunlight. And this was back in, 1991, 92. And that's a much more poetic song about your world is peaceful, mine is full of fear, it's warm down in your valley, out here it's so cold, we're carried in sunlight when the mind begins to fold. It was a much more poetic attempt, and perhaps more naive attempt, to write a song about dementia, whereas this is a tougher song, but it feels honest and it feels true, and I feel like it says, "Dad, I love you," despite natural differences between a father and a son.
Yeah, it's showing rather than telling, isn't it? It's rather than describing the situation, it's giving examples of how that plays out in reality. And the shadowboxing being the centerpiece, I guess, of that, framing that situation. Thanks for sharing it with us, Martyn. It's a powerful song. We'll play that for the listeners now.
You stand there and you shadowbox me, though it feels like I could blow you down. You're still in there fighting like a good one now. Yeah, you're smiling and you're ducking down. We played that game when I was a kid. Yeah, we played it all our lives. Bottom line is love, my father. Bottom line is love. The bottom line is love, my father. The bottom line is love. Well, that was you there in my corner when I went down for the count. I could spit blood there in the bucket. You'd patch me up and you send me out. Some nights I'd dance there with you, other days there'd be 1,000 miles. Bottom line is love, my father. Bottom line is love. Bottom line is love, my father. Bottom line is love. Bottom line is love, sweet father. Bottom line is love. Bottom line is love, my father. Bottom line is love. And I sit in dappled sunshine, approaching 6 o'clock, an incandescent moment, and a soul that's taking stock. It's time to call my father. He'll be sleeping in a chair, and he'd kiss me if he knew me, but his mind resides elsewhere. I have an anger, I have sadness, I have joy that won't let go. Bottom line is love, my father. Bottom line is love. The bottom line is love, my father. The bottom line is love. The bottom line is love, my father. The bottom line is love. The bottom line is love, sweet father. The bottom line is love. Taught me that.
Okay, yes, that was Shadowbox in by Martyn Joseph.
That's just
Yeah,
a demo, by the way. It's not finished. I mean, that might be how it ends up on the album. I don't know, but that's just a kind of the one take I did at piano with it. But I kind of like it. It's got something.
yeah. I was going to ask you what it was like, what writing that one was like, and so it sounds obviously you mentioned writing a song for your granddad as well. So like, you've clearly written songs in times of personal difficulty before about them, but this one, and I also I sympathise with the situation. I had similar thing with my grandma, where I think it was as long as Dad's had Alzheimer's for, but that it's very complicated emotions, isn't it? Of someone's still there physically, and you still get those moments of them coming through, and there's other times where they're not the same person at all, and they don't know who you are, and it's a very difficult situation to manoeuvre. But what was writing that one like, and have you played it for your dad?
No, I haven't played it for him. No, because as I say, he just I don't think I could, to be honest, Ben. I don't think I could get through that with my dad. With the situation right now, that would be too tough. So I think it's for other people to hear, I think, and apply to their situation. He probably wouldn't see it this way, but I kind of see it as a tribute to him too. It's funny that I should write a song called Shadowboxing, really, because the sport that glued us together for years was golf. Because my dad, I started playing guitar when I was 10, but Dad joined me at the local golf club, and we talked earlier about something that makes us feel that we're present, and I got really good at golf at a young age, and that's what I wanted to be a pro golfer, you see. So I got down to very low handicap and competed in national as an amateur, and my dad played and I played golf together all our lives. And there was a tournament called the Fathers and Sons near London, which we played in for 40 years together. And if Springsteen had rung up and said, "Can you come on tour with me, Dad?" If it had crossed with the Fathers and Sons that time, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I should have written a song about golf in many ways to illustrate our relationship, but this was, as I say, that's the beauty of songwriting. It takes you down this road that you never dreamed of. But but if that bit had just been a moment of fun between us, and then I thought, yeah, that's nice, Dad, and if I hadn't wrote down Shadowbox and just those two words, then it would have been a huge missed opportunity to write something that, for me, sums up that situation, but not. I don't think it's too sentimental. I think it's a song with a balance between the two, and I'm kind of known for my sentimentality. I think I've been described. Melody Maker said that I made Julie Andrews sound like Leonard Cohen at one point. So I think it's I'm glad it's a tough song, and I think it's sympathetic, but without being too sentimental.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to get, but yeah, I think you got it well in that song. There's a film, I thought it's just come out, or it's coming out soon, but it's kind of a similar story. Have you heard of this one? It's Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman, the father.
Yeah, I've been meaning to go and see it this past week.
Yeah.
I'm frightened to go and see it because I know it's going to devastate me.
Yeah, like I did say the same thing. Really want to see it, but have to be feeling strong emotionally that day.
It's going to bust me wide open in a public place. But it's this is where we need to go. It's part of being human. It's and some people can't face that, and I understand that. But for me, I've always felt these things, and I continue to feel them, and try to honour them as being part of the journey of being fully alive, the joy is that I get to do something that I'm told helps other people feel that way. So it's extraordinary blessing, really.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. And I think it's all these things like like anything that can highlight personal challenges that other people are going to face. Like not everyone can share those experiences in a way. Not everyone can face those experiences. Not everyone can share them, but everyone can benefit from hearing other people's, like from knowing more about it. Information is always good, and so like the more stories we have of people who have dealt with, loved ones dealing with Alzheimer's and all these other conditions and things like that, and it, like we were talking right at the very start, we've gone full circle, haven't we, of making people feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's one of the best things about art and everything of sharing people's stories and bringing people together. So that feels like a great point to close the section of this podcast out. So thanks a lot for your time, Matt, and it's been really nice talking to you.
You too, Ben. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, and before we go, we had a little chat before we started recording. I think you mentioned it in the podcast briefly, but you tell us a little bit about your charity work as well before we go, so any of our listeners can.
Yeah, there's a charity that runs alongside the music that I have made now for so many years, and it's called the Let Yourself Trust. If people go to letyourself.net, they can take a good look at the website and see the wonderful charities that we work with. We basically, my wife and I, Justine, formed this after I went to the West Bank to play a festival in Palestine 6-7 years ago now, and was so saddened by the situation for young people behind the wall there and the lack of hope for them, and we supported a children's theatre there in the Ada refugee camp called Alawad that gives young people a means of expression through the arts, gives them musical instruments, camera lessons, photography lessons, drama, dance, so that they can express themselves in a positive way in such a negative place. And we raised some money for them, and then we decided to form this charity, and basically we change project every 6 months. So we focus on just small organizations. Often it's a husband and wife or a small local community group that spots something that they think they can do something about, and they're very tireless. They don't waste any money. So people get charity fatigue these days, and because they worry that their money, so we only work with people who just literally they're so devoted to their, and we've been amazed. I mean, thanks to my faithful audience, people have signed up and donate a few pounds every month, and through now 7 years we've raised over £500,000 and given it away across the globe, and to these wonderful organizations. If you go to our website, you'll see just about 13-14 organizations, I say, and we don't hear about these things, Ben. We hear about all the bad news, and that affects our health. We have to immerse ourselves in the truth and reality of life, but we also need to realize that the darkness is the light is so much bigger. There are so many people out there doing amazing things, like what you're doing with Swan Song, but people don't hear about this, and so they therefore, they think that overall we're not good, and I'm totally the opposite. I believe that it just takes a few people doing negative things and they grab the headlines, and they grab our sense that it's all doom and gloom, and it's not. There's amazing things happening every single day across this planet, and that's where I find my hope, as well as along with the new generation of young people who I think are far less racist and more open and tolerant than my generation ever have been. And so my feeling is the future is bright as long as we can give people the opportunities to do these things, to bring good into the world. So that's what we're doing. But go to letyourself.net, take a look, and be inspired, not by us, but by these beautiful projects. And that's it.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Matt. And I'll put the link in the description if people want to check it out. It's some great work you do. And I really liked what you were telling me before about the So then whichever project you're supporting in those 6 months, you talk about it at all your gigs.
From the stage. Thanks for doing my job. I forgot that bit.
Yeah, 'cause I mean that's like, that's a relatively simple thing for a musician who performs a lot to do, but has such a big impact for awareness of the cause, and also what you're saying then about spreading some of that good news or some of the good stuff what's going on. But that alone could make a huge difference to lots of organisations, and you never know who's at those gigs who then might go on to support them a lot. And like I say, having your supporters who donate regularly, which all goes towards it as well. It's a brilliant method of doing it.
And the great thing is that as artists, hopefully you build up a relationship with your audience, so that, and trust is a part of that. It really is. So that when I stand there and say, "Hey, folks," and I play to hundreds, not thousands of people. I'm playing to 200-300, whatever it is. Arts theatre somewhere up and down the country, and thousands of festivals maybe, but just that's it. But when I say, look, there's this couple from Milton Keynes who have this big heart for people with albinism in Uganda, and their work is amazing. You might not think albinism still exists. Well, look, it does, and here's blah 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 blah. They believe me, which is and people are so we become skeptical of truth in these days of so much truth in inverted commas out there. It's all there. So when someone that I trust or you trust says, I've seen this, and then you say, okay, and people are inherently generous and want to make those differences. So I think there is so much power in the smaller organizations rather than the big guys doing all that. And some there are some fantastic big charities, but I think that but grassroots organizations across the globe, you take them away, the place falls apart. Simple as that. And that's what we try to highlight. And as I say, people seem to trust my words, and I'm very grateful for that. And so we had our board meeting on Saturday, and I was in tears looking at some of the results, and we had a video from those people like Andrew and Jane Betts and Martyn Keynes showing us how certain things have been able to do, how families have been able to have life-saving operations because of the support of people from my audience. Well, that's just amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant, Martyn. Great work, and I'll put all the links in the description. People can check it out. I'll put the links to your website and everything as well, so people can, and I'll tag your social media pages so people can check you out, and hopefully catch you on the road at some point in the near future.
You'll be welcome anytime, and thank you for doing this. And I don't mean anything for myself, but thank you for that. But for the work that you're doing with people, towards the end of their journey or the start of another journey. And I think it's brilliant. And Godspeed to you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martyn. Likewise, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. We're back with another episode soon.